He's Charles Robinson. He's Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. It's Inside Coverage, gentlemen. And look, we got a lot to get to. We're going to talk quarterbacks because who doesn't love a good quarterback conversation, including a great convo on Brock Purdy. C-Rob doing a bunch of work on that. But before we get to any of that, gentlemen, let's get right into Thursday night football. It was a butt kicking that was still ugly. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know. The Jets absolutely just hammer the Patriots. C-Rob, what am I supposed to make of that game?
Well, look, everyone's talking about how Aaron Rodgers moved, right? I think that's the thing when you watch that game. I'm sitting there and I'm staring at it and I'm thinking, of all the film that you watch, if you go ahead and go to the all 22 in week 2 and going into week 3, you sit there and you look at Derek Carr with the Saints and you go, why does Derek Carr look like he's 5, 6, 7 years younger when he's playing on the field right now? The way he looks physically, the way he's moving, he's navigating, he's sliding around and being elusive. And yet I think that's the last thing on earth that we expected from Aaron Rodgers, right? Gray beard, looks, I'm sorry, look, from the shoulders up, looks older than ever. And yet he's out there not only running, but he's sliding around the pocket. He's being elusive. He's throwing on the run with insane accuracy. The touchdown pass, obviously rolling to his right to Garrett Wilson, was probably one of the best passes I've seen Aaron Rodgers throw in 3, 4, 5 years. He looked like the MVP that the New York Jets thought they were getting. Now it's one night, and we'll see if this is sustainable, but that to me was remarkable. You just don't see quarterbacks at his age suddenly, all of a sudden, turn the clock back 5, 6 years on their career and look like a mid-30s player again, and that's what Rodgers did.
I think the one caveat here is, are the Patriots good? Like, we kind of jumped the gun and we're like, oh my God, they beat the Bengals. And, okay, well, maybe the Patriots are just bad. But I don't care. You beat another NFL team the way they did, a non-Panthers NFL team anyway. And I mean, at one point, there's 4:20 left in the game, and the Jets had 400 yards and the Patriots had 93. Like, this was utter domination. And I always said all offseason when I was really high on the Jets, and I picked them to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC and all that by the end, I said, Aaron Rodgers just needs to be average. Just be the 15th best quarterback in football. And he looked like a lot better than that last night. Like, it really did. Like, you were right, Charles. Like, he was moving in a way that you're like, whoa, this is actually, none of my fears are there anymore with him.
Whether the Patriots are good or bad that has no bearing on his movement. He was not moving like a guy who tore his Achilles, right? He was not moving like a guy, a 40-year-old quarterback. He was moving like the young Aaron Rodgers. And again, look, Frank, you and I are on the wrong side of 40, right? It can be
speak for yourself.
It can be a good day. It can be a bad day. I am not moving like I was moving when I was in my mid-30s. Okay. It doesn't matter what my opponent is. I'm sure as hell not looking like I'm 10 years younger than I really am. And yet Aaron Rodgers was.
The worst part about being on the wrong side of 40 for all of us is that, man, there's no rhyme or reason to why one day's good and the next day's just awful.
Right.
And I can't figure it out. I'm working out so hard, and then one day I'm like, I'm a beast, and the next day I'm like, what am I doing? I can't even I just need to leave right now.
You're like, what did I even do yesterday?
Wait, what? What about the random pain where you're like, I don't know where that's really located. Is there something going on? Do I need to go to the hospital immediately? Like, where is this thing that's happening to me? And then like an hour later, you're like, oh, it's gone. I'm okay.
Yeah, and we do have to look. I mean, all jokes aside, like, what happens when it gets cold late in the year and Aaron Rodgers really doesn't want to get hit? And I'm serious. Like we, late in the year when he's had some wear and tear on him, like, is this going to still look like this where he's moving around? I hope so, because this was fun last night. And I think other than Aaron Rodgers, look, one thing we need to say too, the Jets look good, not just Aaron Rodgers. They have 2 good running backs. Braylon Allen, my goodness, my alma mater, University of Wisconsin, so misused him last year. That dude is awesome. He is going to be, him and Breece Hall are maybe the best 1-2 combo in the league right now. They're really, really good. They had pass catchers step up. Look, Christian Gonzalez kind of took Garrett Wilson out of the game. Like, he just wasn't a huge factor in this game. So Aaron Rodgers said, oh, Mike Williams is over there. Tyler Conklin had a big game, and he had guys making plays all over the place. The offensive line looked pretty good most of the night. We'll see about Morgan Moses going forward and all that. And the defense was just awesome. Like, you could tell, again, for the first drive of the game, the Patriots can't block these guys. Like, it's going to be such a long night for Jacoby Brissett. So I thought, but the the main story last night was Aaron Rodgers and how he moved and how he looked and how he threw the ball. It looked like an MVP. But really, an underlying story here is how dominant the Jets were. That's why I fell in love with this team in the offseason, because I looked at that roster and said, this might be the NFL's most talented roster if the quarterback just comes together with it.
But there are two things that we know about Thursday Night Football. Well, one thing we know about Thursday Night Football, one we know about the Jets. On Thursday Night Football, you revert to whatever works the best for you. Like, because you don't have as much prep, you're going to go to what works best.
Right. Yeah.
And then the other thing that we know is that Aaron Rodgers hears everything. And look, anybody that talks to anybody around it will tell you that he listens to what the media has to say. He hears what schlubs say on different shows. Like, it's in his head. To me, I watched last night and I thought, you know what? This is vintage, because this is Aaron Rodgers telling the world, I heard you say that I wasn't mobile enough the first couple of weeks. And also Aaron Rodgers saying, by the way, when I only have basically a day of practice to get ready for a game and I have to go to what's most natural, it's still this. And this is really hard for teams to beat. I think that's sort of the inspiring message if you're a Jets fan right now, is that you saw Aaron Rodgers hear the noise, process the noise, shut the noise up, and also do what he does best in a way that's really hard to defend. I mean, there were a couple of passes there where guys fell on routes and he still found a way to get his legs moving to extend plays and then made beautiful throws downfield. See, Rob, like it was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the rival, right? This is what, not just Jets fans, this is what the Jets organization has been waiting for. They've been dying inside to get this game. I mean, it has felt like a lifetime for that coaching staff, for the front office, just to finally get to the point where Aaron Rodgers puts tape down that they expected to still be able to happen, to occur. And not just put tape down, but put tape down that showed him doing things that I think even they weren't entirely certain he was capable of doing. I've been in Jets practices. Jory Epstein's been in Jets practices. Charles McDonald's been in Jets practices. We've been in Jets practices together and watched Aaron Rodgers look old, look tired, look like, oh, it's so hot out. And at one point, I remember being in a Jets practice where it was so hot, he had to sit down, like on the sideline. Like it was so weird. Like, I'm like, wow, I've never seen a guy kind of roll over to the sideline and literally like kind of sit down for a second. This reminds me how old Aaron Rodgers is. But like Frank said, this is the culmination of the Jets actually being a really good team, which they are. They're too deep. Their roster is very, very good. That offensive line. And again, we're going to wait and see what happens with Morgan Moses. But Olu Fashanu, right? You see this happen,
right.
and
he
then
looked great in the preseason.
Yeah, and then you what do? You check in the rookie from Penn State, a top end offensive tackle. Brandy's playing right tackle, not left tackle. But again, that is what could not happen last year. A tackle goes down.
Right.
And then you're destroyed. It's over. Like, what are we going to do now? Their depth was so good at the offensive line coming in that we watched them suffer an injury and they plugged in a young player who, granted, doesn't have experience, but definitely has talent. And to kind of hit on a point that Frank made, the Braylon Allen pick, I went through there in
the
camp.
Cowboys couldn't have used him.
Oh, my goodness. I went through there in camp and I thought, he looks pretty good. Like, this kid looks pretty good. And then when you would talk to the front office, they're like, no, we got something here. Like, we have something. And I remember watching him prior to this game, just in the limited snaps that he got. And I'm like, what happened? How did he fall in the draft the way that he ultimately did? And I know it had to do with, he didn't run a 40. He didn't do a lot of the agility stuff. And teams are like, is he just a straight line banger who, and the way it was described to me is he needs his offensive line to kind of set things up. No, I think Frank's right. I think Wisconsin misused him.
Oh,
I think the Jets found him. Like, they made a really good pick. And you see the mixture of veteran presence on that team, especially on the offensive line, that helps. But then you also see the young players that Aaron Rodgers responds to. And you guys, I want explain to me, because I don't understand it, how Allen Lazard goes from a piece that is not usable, the Jets literally staring at a hole in their salary cap because they paid this guy, and going, what happened? Like, where did he go? He's gone. We paid a guy who now no longer exists as a workable piece at the wideout position. And now all of a sudden in 2024, and Rodgers talked about it a little bit, he's back in a groove again. He's got his guy who trusts him and he's making plays. there's just so many pieces to that game against the Patriots. And again, it's a bad Patriots team. I get it. I'm not going to go get over my skis on this, but there were certain aspects of that game where you're like, it's not so much about the opponent. It's just straight up what we're seeing from the Jets roster.
And part of this too, I think, is just the confidence within the organization now of like, that's it. That's it.
Yep.
And I thought the coolest moment of last night was late third quarter, Jets get the ball and the whole stadium starts, because they're blowing out the Patriots. You know where this game is going. And the whole stadium starts chanting, Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron tells them to quiet, and they don't. They just keep chanting. Because I just, trying to get in the mind meld of Jets fans here. They're like, nah, we've waited a long time for this. We don't care if you can't hear your audibles for a series. We're going to enjoy this moment, okay? We are here. We are ready to compete in the AFC East. We're ready to compete in the AFC. And I think that the team felt that. I think the front office felt that. I think the coaching staff felt that it wasn't a Tennessee game. They were still ragged in the Tennessee game. They got to win. Good for them. But this was a game where you say, this is what we expected Jets football to be with a healthy Aaron Rodgers. And I think Patriots or not, you could take this going forward and be confident that, yeah, maybe week one we didn't look good. Maybe week two was a little rough, but now we're ready. We can compete with anybody in the NFL.
I do want to address the New England side of this, where Ramondre Stevenson was a prop bet that some of our guys liked at 15.5 carries. I only mentioned that that's significant because the entire team only got 15 carries out of this game.
They just never had the ball.
They never got...
It was unbelievable. The time of possession was ridiculous.
But we did get a Drake May sighting, 4 of 8, 22 yards, 2 sacks. So this comes back to, let's just remind everybody, we've been screaming it on all of our shows. Playing Drake May might seem like a great idea, but playing Drake May might actually be a really bad idea. And C-Rob, I think we got a little indication of that last night.
Yeah, here's the thing about May. He checks in, it's 24-3. The defense is pinning its ears back. The offensive line is busted up at that point. They're just getting their ass kicked. And I think instantaneously everyone knew this is a little dangerous. At this point in the game, to stick him in, even with the first team defense starting to sub players out, their mentality hadn't changed. And the offensive line wasn't suddenly going to get better. And everyone knew the entire defense was coming at every opportunity at Drake May. So yeah, it was a little scary. Now, he did have a nice completion. He did lead the team down, and I was a little disappointed they didn't call their last time out and at least give him an opportunity to potentially throw a touchdown pass. It was weird, I'm like, take your time out. Give the kid a chance. He took the punishment. He led you down into the red zone. Now give him a chance to throw a ball in. I don't know if some of that is, he's been hit already. Let's not continue to risk this. And maybe we're thinking of starting him next week against San Francisco. So let's not go ahead and push our luck at this stage. But Fitz, as you said, this is, we're going to talk about rookie quarterbacks. We're going to talk about performances. We're definitely going to talk about what's going on with Caleb Williams in Chicago, which is crazy right now. And what you see, and the two guys I think we'll talk a lot about is what's going on in Washington with Jayden Daniels, where you watch and you look at the game plan and how they have specifically designed the scheme to protect him at a maximum level, basically saying, we don't trust our offensive line, so we're going to completely warp what we do and warp what his skill set is to just make sure he does not get hit on a consistent basis. Versus Chicago, where it's like, hey, yeah, we wanted to balance out the scheme and run the ball and not put it all on Caleb, but we're just going to put it all on Caleb, and he gets destroyed. And now that has become the storyline in Chicago. If you're going to play these young guys, and I'm with you, I am very much in the camp of let's sit them, park the Ferrari in the garage for year one, and figure it out as you move forward. But if you're going to play them, make sure that you draw it up in a way where you're putting them in the most advantageous position and you're getting the ball out as fast as humanly possible if you don't have the offensive line to roll forward. And I don't think that the Patriots do with Drake May.
Let's get into breakdowns on all the quarterbacks. We'll get into Caleb, plus Will Levis, Jayden Daniels. Got a bunch of quarterback talk. We will do it next as we hit C-Rob's quarterback room after a quick break. Gentlemen, let's take a look at quarterback room. I want to go back. C-Rob, you were just talking about, offensive coordinators managing what's in front of them. And it's funny to me because there are 2 times in my life that I know that I've had to deal with this in a different way. Like I know the first show that I played with the band Perry, when I was first like, am I going to get this gig? I got the CD the night before, 17 songs on it. And I ended up playing like 6 instruments with the band. But for that run of shows, it was like just play the fiddle because you don't need to worry about doing 20 other things. Just go in and do this one thing and be great at it. And there was a real moment for me. I also remember the first time, it was July 3rd years ago, the first time I ever got to host Mike and Mike. It was still Mike and Mike at the time. And so it was me and Mike Golick Jr. And I walked in and the guy handed me, the producer at the time, handed me all of the ads that I had to read. And I was like, great, what are the topics we're talking about? And he's like, don't worry about that. Like you need to worry about one thing today. You need to worry about making sure you get in and out of every segment and pay the bills. And that sounds stupid to people, but what they were doing in both of those situations was kind of managing what was on my plate because it was all a lot and it was all very new. And I just think sometimes we look at quarterbacks and we're like, all right, day one, go in and run the whole damn offense. And like, that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, it does feel like we should start, like, I don't care if it's construction. I don't care if you're an Uber driver. I don't care if you work in a restaurant. Like, easing people into it just seems to have more success to me.
Let me, real quick, because we're going to get into Caleb, Charles. I do want to ask you this because I know you've rewatched this and all that. I don't know whether to put the blame on the Bears offense on Caleb for trying to do too much and go off script, or on the Bears for basically running an offense that he shouldn't be running in his second, third NFL game. Because to me, it is more on Caleb of get the ball out. Like there's too many, like we all know how many pressures the Texans had the other night, and 17 from Will Anderson, Daniel Hunter and all that. But to me, that's a quarterback stat. Pressures are there's a reason Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were the least sacked quarterbacks year after year. Yeah. And it's not because they had a great offensive line. I view it as Caleb has got to hit his 3rd step, 5th step, whatever it is, and get the ball out. Don't play USC your final season there, run around and try to make something happen. But where does it lie to you? You've studied it more than I have, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think here's the thing that I think is the responsibility of the team. You know what Caleb is. He will do that thing where he runs around and tries to extend plays. He'll play out of structure. That was the massive conversation about Caleb coming into the NFL is, can you get him to play in structure enough and play right enough to run a functional offense with him? So once you know that, it's incumbent upon you to say to Caleb, hey, look, there are going to be times where you just got to throw the ball away. You just got to take whatever the hot read is. You got to take if it's a pass to the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage, get it there, get the ball out of your hand, and let's ultimately move forward. I'm the opposite. I put it on the Bears right now. I think the Bears I think Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, came in and everyone was excited because they thought he runs a balanced scheme. When you look at his history, he definitely is someone who leans into the running game. Okay, well, especially against the Texans, where the hell was that? Why did they just completely abandon, and it was still a close game, why did you just completely abandon the run game, even as a tool to say to the Texans, okay, you can keep coming, but we're going to run a running back into your teeth at times, and we're going to at least make it a little tough for you where you're just not constantly badgering our quarterback into throwing off rhythm, putting balls in bad places, or just taking massive hits. You have to do something from a game planning perspective to try and limit and protect Caleb Williams. And I don't think the Bears did that well at all. I definitely put that on them. And I think one other thing I would say is, and we'll talk about this as we go on, I can't get over when I look at Washington, and Washington has a worse offensive line than Chicago. They absolutely do. And Washington knowing they have a worse offensive line, okay? And then Washington saying, we're just going to have to do some things offensively that don't fit who Jayden Daniels is. Unbelievably great downfield passer in college. One of the greatest deep balls in college football. We drafted that. But to accomplish that, we have to let mid-range routes develop. We have to let deep routes develop. And what that means is Jayden's got to hold on to the ball, and we just can't afford to do that right now. So we have to take that part of the game off the table for Jayden and protect him, and we do it by scheming. Sorry, Terry McLaurin, you're not going to be getting the numbers that normally you would because you run deeper routes and you take time. We don't have time right now. We have to sacrifice it now and slowly open it up as we go on. The Bears have not done that. They said, we're just going to do what Caleb does and hope that it works on this level, and it's not.
You see, Charles, what I look at with Washington, and let's be honest, if Malik Neighbors catches a 4th down pass, we're having a little bit different conversation about the Commanders, right? Like, I look at that offense as you're being too conservative. You can't play this way either.
But Frank, they've opened it
They're
up.
getting nothing going beyond the line of scrimmage.
Sure.
What if you
just suck and you're just trying to minimize how much you suck until you don't
but
suck?
that's not NFL. At some point, you got to go play football.
Okay, but Frank, you have to look at the trends. Okay, that is my argument with you. Is I would say he has played 4 halves of football, and in every half of football, we have slowly seen Cliff Kingsbury's open it up a little bit. That first game, and you're right. I think through 2 weeks, he had thrown, I looked it up and I looked at the charts. He had thrown 22 passes that were at the line of scrimmage or behind it, which is insane. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you think about it,
he's executed it well. Like that, I'll give him that for sure.
But you're not going to get a lot out of that, right? I mean, like you're going to
score 7 field goals. That's what you're going to do.
You're nibbling.
If you're lucky.
It's a nibbling offense. Like, it's horrible. But I get it from the standpoint of them saying, what is the priority here? The priority is his health. He's going to risk things himself by taking off and running. So let's take the part we can definitely control and control it to the point of force feeding an offense that makes sure he gets rid of the ball and, early. But then when you look at each half, and again, there's 4 halves of football. Look at his last half. They opened it up was good so much more.
That's how they got to play.
Yeah, you can see they're getting comfortable with, okay, we can trust him a little bit. Okay, this works or that works, or we can move the pocket. Let's go ahead and let him throw beyond the line of scrimmage. Let's go ahead and even take some shots beyond 10 air yards because now we know what we can do and we can trust him. I think that's part of the process of grooming him into the position as you move forward, which the Bears I don't think are doing well with Caleb Williams. Instead, they're treating him like the skill set he had in college. Let's go ahead and roll that out on the NFL level and hope that it ultimately works. And it doesn't. And now what do you have? Roma Dunze's dad is out there tweeting, clips of his son open. That's horrible.
That's early. That's early for that.
It's really early. And DJ Moore,
Beckham's dad until like a 4th season.
Yeah. Roma Dunze's dad's not waiting. DJ Moore is sitting there pissed off, furious on the sideline where you're like, whoa, that is a problem that you have a number 1 receiver who basically won't look at his quarterback on the sidelines because he is so upset. And I know DJ Moore's come out and I think he's effectively said, I wish I hadn't let my emotions get the best of me there. And that's great. That's the veteran move on his part. But already you have the star receiver in year 1, whose dad is already going off on the situation. And then you have the number 1 that you traded for, who's upset. And by the way, was a big fan of Justin Fields before you traded him. This is a lot to deal with if you're Chicago. And I think there is a reason to be a little worried about it because you're like, this is way too much chaos, way too early with this guy.
But this, guys, is why I constantly stand up on the soapbox with my megaphone and scream coaching matters. Like, look at the tendencies of Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury is not a conservative coach. So if he's conservatively coaching the offense, then we ask ourselves why. And then you start to see, okay, I understand the benefit. There's a reason this coach is dialing back what he does to be best for the player. I turn around, and Frank, you heard me scream this all offseason. The reason that I was worried about the Bears was never about the talent of the Bears. It's about the fact that I don't really trust Matt Eberflus in general to put together a staff that's going to maximize the players that he has. So in my mind, I'm looking at a Bears team that's struggling in the one way that was predictable. Like there is enough talent, but you definitely have to have the coaches that are going to come in and treat this all like a basket and chopped. You open up and say, here are the ingredients. How do I make a great dish? Do we really believe that anybody right now with the Bears offense is actually coaching the Bears offense to get the most out of Caleb Williams while he develops? No, I think what they've done is they've thrown him in and they've said, you've got these weapons. Go be an NFL quarterback. Y'all, like, that didn't even work for Peyton Manning his rookie year. Like, rookies transition are difficult. We've just got to acknowledge that. And the fact that the Bears aren't acknowledging that, to me, is kind of predictable because I don't trust the coaching staff.
CJ Stroud was a comment. Let's remember that. Like, CJ Stroud doesn't happen very often.
Man,
rookie struggle.
Facts. He has warped the league. I swear to God. It's like that season in 2023 has given brainworms to the Carolina Panthers. Like it's given fans brainworms where they don't realize no matter
like,
how
why is Caleb Williams not a star already? It's like, oh my God. Like, and CJ Stroud is Dan Marino 2.0. That's why.
And like Fitz, as you say, like there's an element of coaching here where Shane Waldron is doing things that don't make sense. You're like, you look at his past and you're like, he doesn't have this problem. He doesn't have this, like, this trait in him where he's gone off and just been like, hey, we're going to throw everything into the passing game. And even though our guy's getting battered, we're not going to be able to make adjustments and do the things that are necessary to balance
Charles, that's
out.
why I think part of this has gone Caleb. This is how he played last year. We watched him fall into these terrible habits on a bad USC team, and where he's like, screw it, I got to do everything around here.
Okay, but he's not audibling out of runs at this point.
Right.
No,
I get that.
I mean, come on.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
There's a certain element of this where there should be some designed run aspects to that game that should have helped.
They got
out.
good running backs too. I mean, three of them really.
They're
Roshan,
fine. They have depth, right? They have depth.
Yep.
At least make an effort. And I covered the game against the Texans, and I just sat there and I was like, I don't think I've seen a guy get this beat up since David Carr was in a Texans uniform and just get absolutely destroyed and pressured nonstop, and not see a team go, you know what? We're probably going to take the L here. Let's go ahead and shift it to the running game in the second half and try to take the pressure off this guy. And they did. And then afterward, Matt Eberflus gets pressed on, hey, you got protection issues? Because this guy was, he was hurried. Basically every single snap that was a passing snap, he was hurried. And Matt Eberflus basically was like, well, the offensive line is responsible for protection, and the quarterback's responsible, and the running backs are responsible, and the receivers are responsible. And I'm just like, dude, don't do this. Don't make it an everything problem. Like, it's in week 3 that we'll see. Is Shane Waldron adjust? And do the Bears really start to push it as a team running and try to dial back the number of throws and the number of opportunities to get Caleb Williams hit? I think that will matter
against
if we
the
see
Colts,
the
where they should run the ball 40 times.
Absolutely.
Against the Colts. The Colts are so soft on defense right
100%.
now that against Malik Willis, they couldn't stop the run, even though it's coming.
By the way, the Colts are a total aside. Like the Colts game plan against last week against the Packers was trash. Like they didn't try to run the ball and they didn't try to stop the run. It was just a terrible game. Like we've given Shane Steichen a lot of credit for what he did last year. That felt like a bad game plan from both sides of the ball.
Anthony Richardson's going to be a whole other show. So let's wait. That's
fair. That is fair. But one thing that I think becomes difficult for Caleb is that we stack tendencies on. And I'm going to tie this into another quarterback that I'm right now just absolutely savagely ripping every chance I could possibly get. And that's Will Levis, because I genuinely believe the stupidity of play from Will Levis is the reason that the Titans aren't 2-0 right now, which is crazy to say, but I'm going to stack that. See, here's the thing, Rob, like everybody keeps talking about, well, Will Levis is only at a certain number of starts. Frank and I had this conversation on Sunday night. My only counter to that is Will Levis is a 25-year-old grown-ass man playing football right now. And if you go back and look at his college tape at Kentucky, there were a bunch of games that he made throws into triple coverage, and you're like, you just lost Kentucky lost a game to Vandy that is forever stuck in my mind because Will Levis made a throw he didn't have to make into triple coverage. And I'm looking at it and saying, at some point, this is not the offense. It's not the play caller. No, this is wired. Stupid throws is wired into the tendencies of Will Levis. And I'm looking at it and saying, I don't know how the new coaching staff with the Titans can have any faith in their young quarterback at this point.
Country music, Carson Wentz. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I can't.
It's the line of the day.
You guys are both out, completely out after 8 starts?
Out.
Wait, I'm not out.
I know Fitz is. I know Fitz is.
I am not out. But I will say this, like, for him to make plays in back-to-back weeks where you are like, this is insanity. It's like there's an element of trying too hard where if you throw the first one, when he throws the pick six, at the very least, you can go, well, inside of a football structure, that happens to quarterbacks. It's a bad throw. It's a mistake. Maybe he doesn't see a guy. Maybe he's overconfident. But at the end of the day, it's still a garden variety football mistake. You threw a pass that was dumb. It ends up being returned for a touchdown. You lose the game. Then in week 2, I'm sorry, when you're in the grasp and you're spinning around and you're doing things and you throw a backwards pass that is It was dumb. As Brian Callahan said, it was dumb. It was a dumb play. And you're like, okay, that's 2 weeks in a row now that you've done this. And it's not a franchise that can survive with a quarterback that's going to do these kinds of things. And I've brought up Carson Wentz's name repeatedly when I see these things happen with Will Levis, because Carson Wentz had that trait where you're like, he's got an arm, he's got physical stature, he has all these tools that you're in love with, but he has a trait where no matter what, he cannot resist doing too much and costing his team a game. And he is too stubborn from one stop to the next. He was too stubborn for staffs to coach that out of him. I think in week 3, if Will Levis does this, and we saw in week 2, Brian Callahan went off, cursed him out. Cameras caught it. Brian Callahan.
And he didn't back down after. What did you think of that, Charles? We haven't talked about that, because I was like, when I saw that clip, I was like, because most coaches sugarcoat it.
Yep,
like,
absolutely.
Oh, well, it's a breakdown of everything. And here, no, he was like, no, he's a grown up. No, I was like, whoa, that is, for people who aren't around coaches all the time, like, that doesn't seem maybe like that much, but that was a lot. Like, that was a coach basically just throwing him under the bus. And I was shocked by it.
Uncommon moment for head coaches. They don't often tell you really what they're feeling. And we saw it on the camera. He asked Levis, what the F are you doing? And he gets asked about it. And I'm thinking, same as you, Frank. I'm thinking, okay, this is the backpedal moment.
But he's like, no, the camera's caught it.
Yeah, no, he's like, I'm paraphrasing here, but he called it dumb, right?
Yep.
He said, I was mad that it cost us 3 points in a game where 3 points were important. And then he said, as you said, he's a grown-up.
He's a grown-up. That was just a stunning comment. Like, it's just so sharp. Wow.
If you need to call your quarterback a grown-up as you're in the process of ripping him for something that he did that was just dumb, and you called it dumb, that's a pretty significant worry there. And again, I'll go back to if it happens a third time, I think Brian Callahan at that point, you have to go, do we temporarily bench him?
That's what I was going to ask.
Do we sit him down?
Really think they're going to bench
Mason Rudolph? Mason Rudolph.
Come on, Mason.
I'm not saying that there's a possibility that they bench him and go, well, we're just going to ride Mason Rudolph the rest of the season.
Okay. So you're just saying sit him down for a little bit, almost a punish. You ground him for a month.
I think there's a possibility of them sitting him down and looking at him and going, listen, man, this is serious. If you cannot go out there and rewire your brain to take a sack or throw it away, and you do something where you're now costing us points and costing us the game, or giving the other team points and costing us a game, you're going to sit down, and we're going to go ahead and let this other guy roll with it. And we don't care how that looks publicly. This has got to happen. I think that didn't happen in Wentz's career. I think when he wasn't responding to coaching and he was stubborn, especially in Philly, ownership was looking at him going, no, this is not okay. And they went to Doug Peterson and they said, you need to coach him harder. You need to go after this. You need to get in this kid's ass. And it ultimately didn't happen. I think that's why Doug Peterson ended up in another place, because they said you need to make some staff changes, and some of it has to do with Will Levis and how he's being coached. And Doug Peterson's like, nope, not going to do that. And that's how they parted company. It's got to be a different situation in Tennessee. And I'll say this about Brian Callahan. I went through there. When I went through there, he ran the training camp practice that I saw was a tough ass practice. I was like, whoa, they went the full 2 hours. They were in pads. They hit. The players looked absolutely physically exhausted at the end of the practice. And I was like, okay, like, this dude is not afraid to push his veterans, to push his young guys, to basically say, not going to be a country club atmosphere here. I thought the response to Will Levis from him was another example of that he's not going to sit there and go, yeah, we're going to coddle it. No, he's not a coddler.
I would just tell anybody, I don't care if you sell widgets or you make cars. If you go to your boss and you say, I need a day off, and your boss says, fine. And then at the end of the day has an all hands meeting and sits in front of the microphone and says, Karen has requested a day off. She's a grown up. Like, anytime you add, like, if we got called by the Yahoo bosses for something we said in a podcast, and it's like, hey, you're a grown up. That is such a absolute statement within a statement. I don't think you can put enough weight on. I realize football, like, apologists will sit there and say, it doesn't matter. It's just a coach calling out his quarterback. No.
Fitz. Let me ask you something. Do you think he means the opposite when he says it?
Yeah,
Like
of course he come on.
right.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of like, I don't know, man. Sometimes when people say so and so's a grown up,
Fumbled, yeah.
I think sometimes people use that as like I don't think he's a grown up right now, and I'm going to go ahead and say he's a grown up, even though really what you're saying is if he was a grown up, I wouldn't have to say he's a grown up.
1,000%. Like, and also to what we've all said, coaches know what they're saying when they say it. Like, it's never the first time it's come out of a coach's mouth. I feel like
I'm sure it's a lot worse behind the scenes.
Yeah, they've sat in one of their meetings and said he's a grown up, right? Like, okay, one person that is a grown up is Brock Purdy.
He had the whole game he had the whole game to think about that, right?
Oh yeah,
like he had time to think about it. He had to know. I know what I'm going to say here. Like I'm not letting this off the hook. Like it was great. I love it.
Oh, it was great. It was fantastic.
I respect the hell out of it. By the way, Callahan press conferences look like they'll be must-see TV. Brock Purdy, also somebody, C-Rob, you've written about, and as we look at the quarterback rooms across the league, this feels like a real statement opportunity for Brock Purdy this weekend, given everything that's going on and what's on his plate, right?
Yeah, I mean, come on. We can talk all we want about, it's unfair. Like people keep calling him a system quarterback and the league's not fair. He knows that. He got drafted last. Okay. Everybody passed him over repeatedly. He wasn't big enough. He didn't have the arm. He wasn't a off structure guy who could be creative and make plays. There were a million different reasons why Brock Purdy was diminished as a draft prospect. And then he comes in and has success, and that continues. People focus it through Shanahan. It's Shanahan. It's the skill position players. It's Debo. It's Christian McCaffrey. It's George Kittle. It's the offensive line. It's all these things around him that make Brock Purdy great. And not once has anyone stopped and said, well, maybe we're carrying around the stigma of this guy being the last pick in the draft. And so to us, we're always saying he's an overachiever. When maybe it's the NFL teams that underachieved in their draft assessment. Maybe he actually was a better player than anybody thought. And yet we still are carrying around this thought process of, he's playing above his head right now. And it's because of all the surrounding pieces. Well, he has an opportunity to affect that right now. Christian McCaffrey goes out. Looks like it's going to be multiple weeks. Debo Samuel goes out. Looks like it's going to be multiple weeks. George Kittle's hobbled now by a hamstring. Hey, man, all the reasons that people are focusing your success through other individuals, it's taking a left turn right here. And you have an ability to now step in and say, it's me. It's not the system. I am the system. Let me show you I'm the system. And let me go out and raise the play of other players around me right now. And I'll just bring up a conversation I had with him in training camp where he had made this in the offseason, he had made this conversation public about how he wanted to be a dominant NFL player, which was a change. I mean, he was very, very forward about it. He's very aggressive about letting people know that he wanted to be a dominant player in the NFL. And I asked him, I'm like, why put that out there? Like, I understand the mentality. I get it. But why have you been so public about it? And he told me, and this is paraphrasing here, but he was like, I want my teammates to hear that. I want people in the organization to hear that. I want people to know that this is my mindset. This is who I want to be. And this is what I want to do because I'm not afraid of that. And to me, I'm like, that's a step forward. And when I talked to John Lynch, the general manager, about it, he brought up being a broadcaster. And John Lynch was like, you go into these production meetings midweek. And he said the best quarterbacks, they were very intentional about their messaging. They would say things they wanted people to know, and there was a reason behind it. There was a motivation. And I think for Brock Purdy, that motivation is, I'm going to go ahead and burn the ships now. I can't go back and take this back. I'm only in one direction, and I'm telling people what that direction is, and that pushes me forward. And it's what the Rams game has got to be about for him. He doesn't have the surrounding skill position pieces that everyone is focused his talent and success through now. Now he gets the chance to show people that I am the reason why I have this talent and success. It's not a function of other players being great.
And I guess I get it, and I don't. Why has this become such a big deal in NFL talk that we have to assign a guy? Oh, he's a system quarterback. He's not a system quarterback.
I agree. I don't disagree with that.
Patrick Mahomes is obviously an incredibly talented dude. Andy Reid helps him. Joe Montana played with the greatest offensive coach in my mind in football history, Bill Walsh. What? Who cares? He won 4 Super Bowls. It matched together really, really well. almost every great player has been with a great coach too that could get the most out of him.
But Frank, I told you why.
It's such a big deal.
Frank, I already told you why. I just told you why. Because when we look at Brock Purdy, we see last pick in the draft, not big. He's not, when you try to fit him into the ideals of what an NFL quarterback is, he's not that dude. He's not 6'3", 220. He's just not, okay? His arm is not elite. It's not an upper level arm. It's okay, It's fine, but it's not elite. He's not a player who, when you watch him, you go, okay, here we go, out of structure. Look at him do these crazy things. We're so enamored with these quarterbacks who now operate out of structure and are creative and propelling offense forward. We now watch these quarterbacks who are creative and work out of structure, and they propel an offense forward by doing things on the fly that, when we see those traits, we're like, wow, nobody else can really do that. There's only a couple of guys. So that's what make these guys elite. Instead, we look at Purdy and we go, okay, he goes out and does what Shanahan wants him to do. Okay, he has all these elite pieces around him. And so those become these diminishing aspects about him. And people just can't get away from it.
But it's also about money, right? Because they're in a situation now where suddenly you have to make a decision, because even if he takes a discount when he's up for his contract, that discount will still be a $50 million a year player. And that would be a sizable discount compared to what we've seen. So I think money is a big part of why fans flock to this conversation. And guys, put yourself in Brock Purdy's shoes for a second. Can you imagine if the whole league did miss on you? If you are better than the whole league realizes, all of a sudden you're the last pick in the draft and you've done nothing since you were drafted other than prove that you shouldn't have been the last pick in the draft. And then every time you do something good, somebody turns around and says, yeah, but it's really the coach and the players around him. He's not really that good. Like, in the world of manufactured chips on the shoulder that we see all the time, this one isn't manufactured. If I'm Brock Purdy, I am pissed off, and I want the world to see, hey, I'm not defined by where I was drafted, because I'm better than where I was drafted. And it's wild to me that we don't sit here, as much as we sit here all the time and talk about Brady. We talk about Brady and the accomplishment of being drafted where he was and becoming who he was. We talk about where Brock Purdy was drafted as the reason he should be held back. I think that's wild. At this point, he's proven he's an effective starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't really care about the rest.
I think the offseason was definitely a reaction to that. Honestly, I really do. I think he goes out of his way to constantly say, like, he doesn't listen to the outside people. Okay, but I think there was a reason why he was like, I want to be dominant, and I want you all to know that I want to be dominant. And I'm going to go ahead and say this out loud, and I'm going to repeat it. When I'm asked why I said it, I'm going to tell you why I said it. I think that's a response on Brock Purdy's part to being pissed off. It's just how he showcases it.
And I don't mind him saying it. I actually respect it. Like, hey, I'm setting a bar for myself this high. I want to be, change the narrative about myself. I just don't know why it mattered. Like, he's really, really good with Kyle Shanahan. And that's all. And I get that the money does matter. And I've said before, I don't think they should pay Purdy, just because I don't think they could build a championship team paying Brock Purdy $55 million a year. But that's not anything really against Purdy. It's just, I have that much respect for Kyle Shanahan to just take the next guy and do that. But I don't know. I just don't remember growing up and everybody being like, well, Joe Montana's not that good. He's got Bill Walsh. Or
okay, but
Brett Favre's not that good. Mike Holmgren is the guy
Frank, you just did it, though.
Happened.
Frank, you just did it.
Nobody else does.
You just, no, but right there, you literally just diminished the kid by saying, I have confidence of Kyle to take the next guy. I have confidence to take. Awesome. Okay, but you're diminishing him in the middle of that statement. When you sit there and you say, I have confidence that Kyle can just take the next guy, what you are effectively saying is, well, Kyle can do this with anybody. He can make any quarterback good.
Not anybody.
This kid is different.
Better.
But y'all, let's be honest. If First Take and Twitter existed when there was Joe Montana and Steve Young on the same team, people would have lost their minds. The news cycle has changed. Like, I think people didn't talk about it then because people didn't realize that was a conversation. But now, like, they would lead every day on stupid debate shows full of people that haven't watched a minute of any of these teams talk anyway. They're going to sit there and they're going to yell about whether it's Joe Montana or Steve Young over and over and over again. That's all.
What the hell?
It would happen.
It was a conversation then. Like, it just happened a lot slower. It was a debate.
We had to wait till Wednesday to get Sports Illustrated.
Exactly. We had to wait for the, it only happened in 24-hour news cycles instead of 24 seconds. And it was limited, there were a limited number of voices who could bitch and complain about it. But they did, when Montana, went down against the Giants, and then Young ended up starting that next year because Montana got, hurt in preseason. Right then it was like, wait a minute, like who should and I think even before that, it was like, wow, this is strange.
87 when Montana got benched against the Vikings in the Anthony Carter game.
Yeah.
Real quick though, Charles, let me ask you a question straight up. If let's say Brock Purdy $55 million, let's just put it that. Do you think the San Francisco 49ers can win a championship with Brock Purdy making $55 million a year?
I don't. I guess I look at the 49ers.
See, okay,
and
you would have answered right away if you would have been like, yep, absolutely.
I'm filtering it through other teams. When you asked me that, I'm like, well, other players get paid $55 million, and those teams. Do we think the Lions?
But all of a sudden, you're not going to have you're not going to have a Deebo Samuel. You're not going to have a Trent Williams. You have to give up some of these things when you pay your quarterback.
Okay, but the trade off is: do you believe Brock Purdy? Can you bring in other guys? And do you believe Brock Purdy can be one of those individuals who raises all boats? Do you believe that? If you believe
that's exactly it. And I don't know that I believe that.
Okay, well then that's the crux of the argument. You buried the lead, Frank. Like, if you don't believe he is a guy who can make others around him better, then what the hell are we even talking about?
Right. But do you think if you don't have, we're going to find out.
I do.
This is actually, you're right. Coming back to the original conversation we're started to have, we're going to find out some things about Brock Purdy these next few weeks if George Kittle misses time and obviously McCaffrey, Deebo are out. Last year they went 0-3 without Deebo Samuel. It's one of these things where.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we're going to find out a lot about Brock Purdy because right now I sit here and say the cheat code is Kyle Shanahan. I think the world of Kyle Shanahan as an offensive coach, and I think he's kind of the guy driving the bus. And if I was them, I'd say this is really unconventional. But Kyle, we're gonna draft a couple guys in the middle of rounds. You're gonna make stars out of these guys. He had good moments with Nick Mullins for God's sake.
The only thing I'd say to that though is here's the thing. I think that Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan together can rise the ships around them. I don't think Kyle Shanahan and Trey Lance could because they didn't, right? So it's not as simple as just get another quarterback. I think if those two are together, then it's worth paying whatever you have to pay to keep the two together that you need to keep. You don't have a salary cap on the coach, you do on the player. But I would keep those two together simply because I don't want to roll the dice and wonder if I'm going to get another Trey Lance or am I going to get a...
That's the verbiage. That's the verbiage that bothers me. I don't want to roll the dice. I don't want to take chances. I don't want to gamble. Why not? You're in a highly competitive league where everybody's kind of doing the same thing. And if you just go along with the herd, you say, well, everybody else pays a quarterback. We might as well too.
What the hell are you talking about?
Because I'm
willing to gamble that Kyle can take the next quarterback.
What the hell are you talking about, Frank? They went to a Super Bowl with this guy.
Of course they did.
They went to an NFC title game. They went to an NFC title game with this guy. And if they don't try to block Hassan Reddick with a damn tight end, okay, they probably go to 2 straight Super Bowls with this guy. But you're sitting there saying
making $900,000.
You are
There's a big difference. There's a huge difference between Brock Purdy making $890,000 and Brock Purdy making $55 million.
You are the gambler. You are the gambler who has a strategy that wins, and you're going, well, I don't know, man. I'm not making as much money per hand.
Again, my gamble is on Kyle Shanahan. That's what my gamble would be.
My gamble is on Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy together. My gamble is on the two of them together. And I don't think that Will Levis and Kyle Shanahan, I don't think Will Levis and Kyle Shanahan are having that same level of success. I don't think Zach Wilson and Kyle Shanahan are having that same level of success.
Frank, I'm siding with
I don't think Justin Fields and Kyle Shanahan are having that same level of success.
Mistake-prone quarterbacks. I'm talking about taking somebody who could run the offense. Kirk Cousins, we all heard forever about. I don't know. I don't watch college football that long, but should tell you exactly who the 4th-round quarterbacks are. Okay,
Frank's like, hey man, don't worry about that. He's like, don't worry
about.
Kyle
can take if you get the right fit for Kyle Shanahan, again, this is a positive Kyle Shanahan thing. If you get the right guy for Kyle Shanahan in his scheme,
Jimmy Garoppolo was the right guy, right? Wasn't he the right guy?
Jimmy Garoppolo wins a Super Bowl. If they cover Jet Chip Wasp, they win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay, so why does he get the credit? But
no, Jimmy Garoppolo,
and they paid Jimmy Garoppolo, by the way.
I'm saying they were like, Jimmy Garoppolo, we should have won a Super Bowl if, again, we could cover they even call holding on Jet Chip Wasp. They win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. And they're like, we're tired of Jimmy Garoppolo. Let's just go to Brock Purdy.
You are the Matt Millen of general managers, man.
Oh, come on.
You are the Matt Millen of analyst general managers. I'm sorry, man.
I'm just telling you, I think Kyle is the star maker here. I think Kyle is.
Why didn't he make Trey Lance a star then?
Because it was a bad fit. I'm not saying he could take any quarterback. He couldn't come to Castle Rock, Colorado,
literally
and
just
take
said he
whoever
could take any
Castle View
quarterback.
High School
You
quarterback.
literally said,
No, not any quarterback. Not any quarterback.
3 minutes ago, you're like, I'll just take another quarterback.
Another quarterback, yes, the right fit. A robot, a Kirk Cousins. I'm not saying any quarterback. You need the right fit.
I swear to God, it's good we don't do this show in the studio because you and I would be fighting right now. We would absolutely, there'd be a physical altercation. I would have attacked you. We would be on the floor rolling around and Fitz would be yelling, world star.
But the thing you guys cannot do is go, oh, he could just take Zach Wilson. Of course he couldn't take Zach. Of course, Zach Wilson stinks. We all know that. I'm saying a reasonably competent young quarterback.
But Zach Wilson was the number 2 overall
Kyle
pick.
Shanahan's offense.
Here's the number. Like, the draft is such a crapshoot, man. Like, I just, if I've got one,
it's not a crapshoot with Kyle. That's what I'm talking about. If you,
it was when they traded up for Trey Lance.
Was not the right fit.
They traded up for Trey Lance.
We all three of us sit here and know Trey Lance was not the right fit. He does not want a guy who improvises. He wants a robot. He wants a guy who pushed a button. And he's going to go out there and do what you want to do. That is,
and he's got
Trey
that
Lance.
guy.
It was just the whole Mac Jones thing. That was a thing for a reason because that's a Shanahan quarterback.
I've listened.
A guy who's not going to go off script.
Frank, I listened to you say, I don't know why we're having this system quarterback argument. I don't know why it matters.
But it doesn't. It really
and then
doesn't
I literally
matter
have listened to you make the system quarterback argument now for like 15 minutes. Like the guy's like, I don't know why we're doing this, but I'm going to go ahead and do this for 15 minutes. Like, what the hell is going on, man? What is...
All right, we're going to take a break. We're all going to get a nice drink of water. We're all going to towel off. We're going to figure this out.
I'm heated.
And then when we come back, we'll do something that won't get any reaction at all. We'll do the quarterback stock exchange. Who's up, who's down? We'll do it next. Okay, we've calmed down. Everybody's had a little bit of water. We've toweled off. They're calling a therapist. By the way, the day that I decided I was out on Metallica forever was the day that I watched the documentary where they talked about the band going into group therapy to figure out how to communicate their feelings better. I don't want my hard rock bands to have therapy. I do want my analysts on this show to have some therapy.
This is Motley Crue. This is Motley Crue.
I think I'm injecting Jack Daniels into my veins after the show.
This is amazing.
Yeah, right.
I just want to know which one of you is Tommy Lee playing the drums in your underwear. All right. So it's the quarterback stock exchange. We're going to start to do some stock exchange trading here on our shows where we take somebody that we're up on and somebody that we're down on. So give me, C-Rob, as you look at the quarterbacks, give me a quarterback that you've got stock up on right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's Kyler Murray, right? He had 3 of the best throws of the season all in one game in week 2. I mean, the first touchdown pass. Please go to the QB room column. Okay, like I'm literally sitting there and I'm like, okay, I do the 5 throws that blew my mind, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I have to include 3 Kyler Murray throws. I have to go ahead and cheat here and basically take all 3 and say, okay, it's basically going to be 4 and then a 3-pack of Kyler Murray. The first touchdown pass he throws to Marvin Harrison, I think the stats, next gen stats said there was like 0.7 yards between Marvin Harrison and the back of the end zone when he caught that pass. It was it was a Rembrandt. I mean, it was as perfect a pass and placement and timing as you could possibly get. And I'm like, you can't top that. Then the next touchdown pass out, he's rolling to his right. He throws off of one leg, leaning backwards, hits Marvin Harrison perfectly in stride. Now, Harrison was open, but still, it was a jump pass that when you looked at it, you're like, God, that is a crazy pass. Harrison runs it in for a touchdown. And then the third pass, I want to say, was it Elijah Higgins, right, in the end zone? He's scrambling around. It looks like the Looney Tunes cartoons. Remember when the kid gets called into the house and he's like, there's a dotted line where he's running like 15 different directions. He's going under the monkey bars. He's jumping over a fence. He swims through a creek. He basically did all of this to throw that last touchdown pass. I think he held the ball 8-9 seconds on that play. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, man, I didn't realize how much I missed healthy Kyler Murray. Like I completely forgot when he's at his peak, how much I love this player. And I there's no way for me to look at, and again, that's the problem. He gets hurt. So I could love him right now. And we could be, 2 months from now, he suffers a shoulder injury. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what are we doing here? Like, well, he looks terrible. They're losing games. They're on a losing streak. I would do everything you can to protect Kyler Murray at this stage and keep him healthy, because when he is at his peak, they are just a completely different team and offense. And he's going to get Drew Petzing, their offensive coordinator. He's that guy. If this start is indicative of where this is going to go by the end of the season, Drew Petzing's going to get a job, and it's going to be on the strength of Kyler Murray playing out of his mind.
I agree with everything. I think Kyler's playing great. You could see it late last season. He came back, in mid-season, late-ish season from the ACL. And really, first couple of games were a little rusty. And then it was like, whoa, he's doing the Kyler Murray things. And you talked about that play where he's running around doing the family circus thing. And Fitz remembers, like, what was it? The 2-point conversion against the Raiders, if I remember right, where he held the ball for like some ridiculous, like 14 seconds or something like that. He could just do that. Like, that's Kyler Murray. He is fun, man. And he's playing really, really well.
I also think that this is a great opportunity for a ton of people to say, I'm sorry to the Cardinals organization, because as we went into the draft, there were plenty of people that were yelling and screaming about resetting the contract and getting yourself out of Kyler Murray. And this is a great chance to go out, trade him, go draft somebody. We are now seeing, and this is a reminder to everybody, these organizations see these guys day in and day out. We see one game every week, right? And we overanalyze it because that's our jobs. But sometimes you just got to look at the people in the room and say, if I have smart people in the room that see this kid every single day, this man every single day, they might have a better indication than we do of where they are, because I'm watching Kyler Murray in this Cardinals offense, and the first thing I'm thinking is, like, good on them. Like, they have put themselves in a position where, to your point, C-Rob, if Kyler Murray stays healthy, they put themselves in the position where they can have a dominant offense for the next 5 or 6 years. Like, that's what happens.
And Fitz, the crazy thing is they were honest about it. Like, I went in when Jonathan Gannon, Monty Austin Fort got there. I went in the summer of 2023. And I remember I was sitting on a golf cart with Jonathan Gannon, and he said, I thought it was so hyperbolic in the moment. He was like, I'm telling guys, if your ass is not lined up behind Kyler Murray, that's our dude. You're not going to be in the locker room. I was like, this is crazy. Oh, this dude a liar. Oh, there ain't no way he feels this way. Because at that point, Kyler Murray's stock was at its lowest. He had gotten hurt. He was out. He was going to miss games into the 2023 season. Remember the ESPN broadcast where they basically assassinated him on air? Like, they all took turns beating the living. It was like the scene in Full Metal Jacket where they put soap in the towels and they were just beating the living out of Kyler Murray the entire broadcast. And you're like, I've never seen people do this before. This is crazy. And then Jonathan Gannon's like, no, that's our dude. And I'm like, you a liar. But then I came back in 2024 and I told him, I said, you know what? I apologize, because I thought you were full of shit. I thought you were lying. I thought you were saying what you thought you had to say. I was wrong. You stuck with it, and now you're moving forward. And this was even before the start for Kyler Murray.
The one thing you did allude to this, Charles, is that Kyler's playing great right now, but health. Like, when they started 9-0 and they limped to the finish, and all these, it always seems like this is kind of the Cardinals.
His entire career.
Entire career. Yep. You start fast, and then by December, there's these 4 things on the injury report. You might be on the field, unlike the ACL. You might still be on the field, but you're not the same guy. And that's where that's going to be the test for Kyler.
Never had a fully healthy. He's literally never had a fully healthy. When I did the NFC quarterback questions, my question for the Cardinals was, can Kyler Murray have a healthy season? Can he literally, because he's never done it over the expanse of his career. He's never not had a hip or a knee or a shoulder. He's gotten hurt every single year, and it has immediately impacted his ability to play quarterback at a high level. That is from after 2 games, we're overreacting here because there's 15 more where he's going to have to absorb some punishment and not break.
Especially for a wee little man. All right, so from stock up to stock down, what quarterback do you have stock down on right now, C-Rob?
Man, I don't want to keep going back to the Levis stuff. I will say that Anthony Richardson. It's interesting for me to watch Anthony Richardson right now, and he's early in his career, and I think we have to keep telling ourselves he's a rookie. This is his rookie season, because he never got a fully fleshed out rookie season. But I think of what Tony Dungy said. It was like after week 1. Remember when he threw the 65-yard air pass? Like, it was one of the most insane throws I think I've ever seen in an NFL game. And I'm like, oh my God. And then when I looked at his stat line, I'm like, yeah, it's not that. I mean, he threw the touchdown passes, but the inaccuracies, there's a lot of misses here. There's some problems. And Tony Dungy said, I remember that night, he said, this is what you're going to get with this kid. You're going to get highlights and you're going to get lowlights. And, are you going to get him out of this? Through 2 games, we have seen highlights that are fun to watch and that are really exciting, but we've seen him sail balls horribly. Like just like misses where you're like, oh my God, that's embarrassing. And I literally would think about him being in film sessions and being like, oof, like, yeah, man, you missed that dude by 10 yards, 15 yards. Like that's how bad some of the throws have been. I think his stock down is it's down from the standpoint of there is a lot of work to do with him. He is still every bit that raw player we thought he was coming out of Florida. And what's important right now is for the Colts is you have to go back and look at Josh Allen and go, he had a lot of, I'm sort of fudging it a little bit here because I don't know the exact numbers, but he had a lot of sort of 14 of 30 performances his rookie year. You were like, wow, there was a lot of bad to Josh Allen at the start of his career. And they really weaned him along from one year to the next. And we're really at the start there with Anthony Richardson. I just think the parade that we threw, and I personally threw for him after one game, I drew that back a little bit in game 2.
Here's what worries me, Charles, is that week 1, he has 6 rushing attempts. Week 2, he has 4 rushing attempts. And I just wonder if this is all like we spent the entire last 11 months or whatever talking about, Anthony Richardson can't run because you're going to get hurt. And we saw him drop out of 3 of his 4 games as a rookie. And now I wonder if this is just gone too far where he's worried, like the Colts are worried to run him. He's worried to run. Yet we all know that Anthony Richardson has issues as a quarterback. He's not going to be accurate, especially right away. But part of him being this really, really good talent is his rushing ability. And he's kind of cut that out of his game. Like 10 carries and 10 rushing attempts in 2 games ain't Anthony Richardson. He ain't a pocket passer. He's not going to be that guy for you. So I wonder if this whole offseason of discussion of how do you keep Richardson safe, sliding and blah, blah, blah. I wonder if we know his flaws as a passer right now. Whether he'll get better or not, we don't know. But what would make Anthony Richardson a special player is running the ball, and he's just not doing it right now.
But this is who he was at Florida. And it doesn't mean he's not going to be great. It's just he would make a throw that you just sat there and thought, I've never seen a throw like that. And then a minute later, he'd miss somebody wide open in the end zone. And it happened over and over and over again. And what great draft minds and great quarterback analysts said going into the draft that I think was right is you can't coach some of the great things he's capable of, but you're going to have to coach out some of the bad in his game. I don't like a game plan where he's throwing 34 times against Green Bay. That made no sense to me. And to me, I'm looking at this and I see, Rob, your Josh Allen comp is beautiful and it's really smart here. And I think people need to remember that wasn't a 1-year process. That wasn't even a 2-year process. Yeah. It was 3. So in my mind, Anthony Richardson, his first year, the biggest problem in the Colts' whole trajectory is that last year we thought they were going to be garbage. They were better than expected, but unfortunately, they didn't get a full year of what they actually needed, which was reps for Anthony Richardson. So I look at this and say, this is the beginning of not just this season, but 2 more seasons of just making him the best passer he can be. I think Anthony Richardson can be a superstar in this league, but unfortunately, I think everybody termed him as that because of fantasy football coming into this year. He's not that right now. Right now, he's a subpar quarterback that they need to really work on to get to his greatness.
Well, we don't balance it, right? I mean, week 1, and look, I fell into this when I wrote my week 1 QB column. I was like, look at this pass. Like, how insane is this?
And those were 9 completions.
Yeah, right. But those were the highlights that were rolled out. You're like, oh my God, like I've never seen a player do something like this before. And that blow, it's just so exciting. And then you're like, what would have happened if they would have put together a reel of all of his incompletions? Then we'd have been like, oh God, like it's just, like congratulations, you can hit a logo 3. And then you went 2 of 15. like you definitely need some in the middle consistency there. So I hate to say, like when I say stock down, I don't want people to think I'm dogging the kid, right? I'm not dogging him. I'm just saying, as Fitz said, it is an elongated process. We're at the very beginning. And the scary thing for me is that Josh Allen didn't lose the balance of a season to an injury in year 1. Anthony Richardson did. And that's going to have an impact. And the impact is what Frank talked about. He's not running the football. He's taken away a dynamic part of what he is in response to that. I don't know if that's smart or not. I could sit here and, I'm with Frank and and saying, yeah, it'd be exponentially better if he has his entire portfolio of things available to him. But then I could watch him blow out a shoulder and go,
right. No, I get it.
That was a mistake.
I know. But then he's not that dude.
That's what you draft.
That's the thing.
You draft the risk.
Let him be him.
You draft the risk. Yeah,
Yep.
you draft the risk.
All right, Frank, before we get out of here, as the resident degenerates, dumb underdog of the week, you're one underdog for anyone that didn't hear us in week 1. We took week 2 off. We were both not here. For anyone that didn't hear it for week 1, we pick one underdog. If that underdog wins, then we get the point spread. If that underdog loses, we lose the point spread. I got my week 1. You did not, so I am beating you. You get to go first. Who's your dumb underdog of the week?
I'm going to take the Falcons at home. I just think we're not talking enough about how well their defense is playing because we've all been focused on Kirk. I do think they got some momentum off of that last drive at Philly. And the Kansas City Chiefs have had 2 home games. And if Isaiah Likely wears one shoe size smaller, and if that DPI doesn't get called against the Bengals, they're 0-2 coming out of home, 2 home games to start the season. Isaiah Pacheco, losing him is a big, big deal in my mind because they really don't have a lot of depth there. Travis Kelce, 39 yards in 2 games, not looking good. Hollywood Brown's out for the year. I think this Chiefs team has some issues. And I think as a 3.5-point favorite going into Atlanta, I think that they're going to be in a real tough game here. And I think that the Falcons got some confidence last Monday night. I think they're going to play really well at home. Bijan looked great on Monday night. I think they're going to get the upset. I think they're going to upset the Chiefs. All that said, I've really, really, really lost a lot of money betting against the Chiefs. So take that into consideration. But honestly, there's just a feeling that this Chiefs team is right now in a little bit of a bad way.
All right, so you would get 3 points if that's the case, or lose 3 points. I am going to take the Eagles, who are 2.5-point dogs, to the Saints. I know the Saints have looked flawless, but man, I just have a hard time. But I realized that I've lost a lot of money last week on the Saints too. So I realized that maybe this is just reactionary to this, but this Eagles defense I think is going to be able to hold up a lot better against Kamara than the previous couple of teams have tried. They'll shut down the run, and then let's see what Derek Carr does against the Eagles. A little bit of suspect in the secondary, but I like the Eagles to come out, a little bit of fire in their belly. That would be 2.5 points for me. Okay, Emmy and Stone doing God's work behind the scenes, editing this into an actual manageable episode. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, by the way. If you've listened this far through, take the extra 2 minutes. Go ahead and give us a rating review. It really matters a lot, especially make sure you praise me. I'm Jason Fitz, Charles Robinson at Yahoo Schwab on Twitter. You know how to find all of us. Inside Coverage will be back Sunday night, recapping every single game as we do in the wee hours. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys. Enjoy your weekend.